Good afternoon. My name is Becky Wyhand, and I'm the Executive Director of the Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute. And we want to welcome you to the 2017 Foster Youth Internship Congressional Briefing. The interns have been working incredibly hard all summer, not only in their Capitol Hill internships, but also researching and writing federal policy recommendations that they're going to share with you today. So this afternoon is actually the culmination of an incredible amount of work that they've done, and we're really looking forward to sharing their ideas with you. I want to make sure that we acknowledge before we turn it over to the interns a couple of important people who have really helped us get to where we are today. So in the room, we have a couple of our board members, and we also have some of our advisory council members that I want to make sure we acknowledge. We have Jack Gerard, our chairman of the board, and Russ Sullivan also serves on our board of directors, and we're grateful for their support. We also have Rita Sorenin with Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption, and Sarah Gazarek, who is our vice chair of the advisory council. So we want to thank them for their leadership and their investment here at CCAI. I also want to make sure that we introduce each of the foster youth interns by name and state so that you have the opportunity to see where they're representing from across the nation. We have Alexandria WARE from Oklahoma, ALEXIS ARAMBUL from Washington State, DEMONTEA Thompson from California, Eden Harris from the District of Columbia, TET RODGERS from Louisiana, JAMEELAH A. Love from Wisconsin, JAMESHIA Shepard from Michigan, Justin ABBASI from South Carolina, KEOLA LIMKIN from Hawaii, Michael Teresa MELLIFERA from Ohio, Tiffany Boyd from California, and TONISHA HORA from Wisconsin. So in just a few minutes, the foster youth interns are going to present their policy report entitled, Unlocking Potential, the Strength of Our Stories as the Key to Child Welfare Reform. But first, I want to introduce to you the chairman of our board, Jack Gerard, to make a few remarks. Jack is the CEO and president of the American Petroleum Institute, and I just want to take a moment to thank him for his personal investment here at CCI and in the foster youth interns, and also thank him for the investment of the American Petroleum Institute in our work. They are one of our platinum partners, and they invest in our work year-round, but certainly invest quite a great deal in the foster youth interns, and we're very grateful for your leadership. So we wanted to invite you to make a few remarks.
Well, thank you, Becky, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a humble privilege to be here, particularly in the capacity of the chair of this board. And I'd like to acknowledge first our other board member, Russ Sullivan, who's here with us today, who also devotes significant time and effort to this broader cause. Rita and Sarah and some others that were introduced earlier, thank you, thank you, thank you. You're the true pioneers. But also to our FYI interns. I came in today to greet each one of them. They look very different dressed up in their big people clothes. And what I mean by that is our first real time with them is we have the privilege each year with each group of FYI interns to go to our lake home for a weekend. And there, for those who have never driven a jet ski before, we have all sorts of tense moments as we get the experience on the water together. So I've only seen them in their swimming suits prior to today. So it's a change of pace, but thank you for all you do. And thanks for participating in the program and giving it the great credibility and respect it deserves. A couple brief comments I wanted to share is the FYI program, as you know, has been around for some time. And the great and extraordinary work on the part of these interns has been very helpful, and some of which has been enacted into law and into regulation as we learn better about the challenges in our society as it relates to foster youth and adoption. We're very proud parents of two adopted boys from Guatemala and view this as a personal passion to make sure all those around us are given equal opportunity. We're so proud of this group, as we have been with others in the past, for all your great work. The last thing I'd just like to mention in closing today is to thank all those who support our programs, FYI, the CCAI generally, because without their resource, without their time and commitment, their sweat equity, if you will, these programs would not take place and would not happen. I'd like to mention a few today. First, our platinum partners who contribute $50,000 or more per year. The Greater Washington Community Foundation, the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption, that Rita's here representing. Thank you, Rita. She's a longtime board member of the CCAI, and we are very grateful to you for your leadership for many years. Our gold partners, the American Beverage Association, Susan Neely, who's the president and CEO there, is also a member of our board, along with Willie and Corey Robertson. Many of you might know them as the Duck Dynasty people. They are also on our board, and I understand Corey was here yesterday, and all the interns got a chance to hang out with the Duck Dynasty folks. But they also make great contributions and assist us in our larger endeavors. But last and perhaps most important for our endeavors today is to acknowledge those who've made specific contribution and assistance for the FYI, or our foster youth intern programs. First is again our Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption. Thank you again, Rita. The Curtis L. Carlson Family Foundation, Legacy Collective, Retail Orphan Initiative, the Logos Fund at the Lucerne Foundation, Walter S. Johnson Foundation, the Jockey Bean Family Foundation, and Doug and Laura Wheat. Laura also is a member of our board from Texas. And these investors all give the equivalent of a gold sponsor, or $25,000 or more a year, to support this program. So I'd ask you to join me in giving them a round of applause. Thanks to each of you for being here, and again to the FYIs, what an extraordinary, humbling privilege it is to be with you, and we're anxious to hear your great work. And with that, Alexis, I understand I'm going to turn it to you. Thank you again.
Good afternoon, I'm ALEXIS ARAMBUL.
And I'm KEOLA LIMKIN.
Welcome to the 2017 CCAI Foster Youth Internship Congressional Briefing. As foster care alumni of the foster care system, we are here today to share our experiences, as well as provide you all with solutions to the problems we have overcome. Our report is titled, Unlocking Potential, the Strength of Our Stories as the Key to Child Welfare Reform. Potential is the notion of having the capacity to become or develop into something in the future. Each one of us is here today because despite the obstacles that were set before us, we unlocked that potential. We have been called the success stories as the ones who beat the odds. Although this may be true, we want to set a foundation for all those who come behind us. We stand before you today to provide keys to unlocking child welfare reform for all foster youth who deserve equal opportunity in all capacities to reach their full potential.
Some of us will share about why we are here, and some of us will share about the key to accomplishing these great goals. Everyone else in the room will have a key on their chair that corresponds with some of our interns. When your colored key is held up, please stand if you are able and remain standing. I am here because I want to change the intended life cycle for me and be a mentor for my community.
Leadership.
I'm here to make a difference so the future can be different.
Prevention. I am here to transform stakeholders into stockholders in order to create the change that our system so desperately needs.
Power shift.
I am here to ensure all foster youth have access to educational resources regardless of their situation.
Equity.
I am here to give a voice to those silenced by their history.
Advocacy.
I am here because I am sick and tired of being a statistic.
Empower.
Hello again, my name is ALEXIS ARAMBUL and I'm from Washington State. This summer I'm working in the Education Office on the Health Committee for Senator Patty Murray. I would like to thank my office for giving me this amazing opportunity and for allowing me to grow in my professional career. I was born in Washington State to a 16-year-old who was unable to care for me. At the age of 2, I was adopted by my great aunt. Despite her seemingly good intentions, it was not the loving home that was imagined for me, and I consequently missed out on a lot of childhood experiences. I re-entered the system at 15, and after several placements, I ultimately aged out at 18 and became homeless after I was kicked out of my last foster home in the midst of my senior year of high school. Youth-centered foster care placements need to be prioritized by both federal and state child welfare systems. Individualized matching of youth in foster care to a caring foster family is being overlooked and results in an unavoidable high number of placements. There is a tendency in the U.S. foster care system to view all foster youth as the same. The system fails to recognize that each individual is different and has specific needs. The current guidelines regarding placement do not allow for implementation that is individualized. My recommendations are to require state child welfare agencies to use youth-centered recruitment models based on evidence-based strategies and best practice models, as well as collect quantitative data from states that utilize technological services targeted to child welfare agencies to help match children with foster families. To place children into homes with inadequate knowledge about their specific circumstances and needs is doing a disservice to those children. A child-focused recruitment model based on best practices is essential to reducing the amount of placements that a foster youth faces, as well as making sure that they are provided with a safe and loving family. In the Fostering Connections to Success and Increasing Adoptions Act of 2008, the lack of a definition of what non-safety is in Section 104 is a problem. While states are required under this bill to report the types of non-safety standards weighed for kinship placements, it leaves the definition of non-safety ambiguous. This leads me to believe that virtually anything regarding abuse by kinship placement can be waived, leaving a foster child vulnerable to unreported abuse. In 2012, an estimated 5,000 perpetrators of child abuse and neglect were foster parents and legal guardians. Using data to develop technologies and algorithms for child welfare state agencies can improve the outcomes of children in foster care. Lack of data and the lack of its implementation leave foster youth vulnerable to placement instability. It is imperative to assess outcomes of foster youth and why they experience a lack of stability in order to make change. Using evidence-based research, improving kinship licensing standards, and working with state governments, we can implement a system that improves the quality and reduces the number of foster care placements. Members of Congress should consider supporting policy that prioritizes the best interest of each foster youth when determining a foster family placement. Thank you.
What if you didn't have to fake it to make it? What if you can make it just being yourself? My name is Eden Harris, and I'm from Washington, D.C. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the importance of success coaches for foster youth. Please take a moment to think about the person or persons who help you become the person you are today. Was it a parent, an employer, a faith leader, maybe even an inspirational celebrity like Oprah? My policy recommendation is that foster youth can have access to virtual success coaches to steer them to succeed in life. I'm 26 years old, and I'm actively figuring out my career and plans for life. If I had more coaching earlier on, I would be more confident and further along in my career path. While I stand before you today representing the success of this program, my path hasn't been a straight line. Music has always been my safe place, and at the age of 18, my dreams came true. I was accepted into Berklee College of Music. For me, this represented prestige, success, and the opportunity to release the negative stigma of being a foster youth. Berkeley's acceptance conditions required that I attend their summer program with the price tag of $20,000. At the time, I had not the financial nor the parental resources to raise these much-needed funds. I had no one in my life to coach me on how to surmount the seemingly impossible obstacle, but by happenstance, I met Stedman Graham at Howard University. He encouraged me to go back to school, but as a business major. Mr. Graham's efforts to coach me into success parallel the role of a success coach. Young people in foster care shouldn't have to rely on chance to meet a success coach. It should be a part of the support they have in care. It is time to try different approaches to recurring issues. The great Einstein said, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is insanity. Therefore, I propose that Congress create a pilot program of virtual success coaches. This pilot program will encourage public-private partners to boost tech investment in child welfare. The current generation in the foster care system relies on technology for information, communication, and for personal growth. The U.S. government needs to be innovative to reach this generation. So, before you go, what are you going to do when you leave here? Check your phones? Remember, a foster youth could be checking their phones to access a virtual success coach for a brighter future. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Justin ABBASI, and I thank you all for being here today. I would especially like to thank Senator Wyden for allowing me to join him in the Senate Finance Committee this summer, Laura Bernson and Zach Laris for being the leaders that I hope to one day become, everyone at CCAI for helping me become that leader, and my sister, Tina, for being with me through it all. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to talk with you today about three things: healthcare, aging, and teenagers. Our insurance market is designed to break the barriers to healthcare that Americans may face with age. As an individual grows older, they are more likely to need healthcare but less likely to afford it. Therefore, several services, namely under Medicare, exist to help them access needed health services. That reflects the philosophy that age should not preclude the receipt of healthcare, particularly when the need for it increases. However, the behavioral health outcomes of youth in out-of-home care do not currently reflect that philosophy. Youth in care are more likely to experience behavioral health disorders and less likely to receive sufficient and appropriate services for them than other youth enrolled in Medicaid. As they become adolescents and age out of care, they're even less likely to receive the services that they need. It's at that same time that states strip them of the supports that they may have received from child welfare during a time when they have to decide whether to go to school, where they'll work, who will support them, and other important decisions. Now, putatively, all adolescents who age out of care have access to behavioral health services after the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act expanded their Medicaid eligibility to age 26. However, transition-age adolescents still face several barriers to their receipt of needed healthcare services. They first have to know when and how to seek healthcare services, often without the adult support that they may have had in care. They then have to find a behavioral health care provider, of which there is a shortage in the United States, who will accept their Medicaid coverage and its low provider payment rates. Adolescents who age out then face the potential barrier of having their services discontinued as a result of their transition, in addition to several indirect barriers that I expand upon in page 7 of our report. Now, to help address these barriers, my report recommends that Congress further amend Title IV of the Social Security Act to help ensure and improve the availability of behavioral health providers in transition-age adolescents communities, to improve their access to those providers by way of additional wraparound services, and to improve their awareness of how and when to access those services by their caseworkers. Doing so will help ensure that age does not preclude the receipt of health care, particularly when the need for it increases. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you all for being here today. My name is TONISHA HORA, and I'm from Wisconsin. I spent over 10 years in kinship care, 4 in foster care, aging out at 18. I made it out of a horribly abusive home alive, thankfully, but there are many children who don't. 4 to 7 children per day in the United States die because of child abuse and neglect. Prior reports are a leading predictor of child abuse and child fatalities for children under the age of 5. These reports are essential tools in our fight to protect innocent children. For this reason, I'm urging Congress to set forth more effective standards for abuse and neglect reports. Every day of my life growing up in kinship care was full of physical and verbal abuse, and every day my twin sister and I went to school and dreaded coming home. Reports of our abuse were made multiple times by concerned neighbors and teachers, but every time social workers came to our house to investigate, they believed my abusive aunt when she said that there were no issues and that we were just seeking attention. Every time the workers just left us there, our situation worsened. We had lost hope of escaping and lost hope in a system that was supposed to be there to protect us. If the reports made by our community had been permanently documented in a central registry and followed up on based on the number of reports received, my sister and I may not have lived in an abusive house for over a decade. When reports of abuse and neglect are made, the time that records are kept, if they're kept at all, vary greatly state by state. Because of this, many children are falling through the cracks and continuing to live lives stained by abuse. States should be mandated to keep both their screened in and screened out reports for a minimum amount of time, and ideally this amount of time should be 25 years or more to ensure that there's a paper trail to protect any child still left in the home, including younger siblings. There needs to be an interstate data sharing system in place so that the reports can be retained and information quickly passed between states if it is needed for calls on families that move out of state or flee. Additionally, it should be mandated that 2 or more reports on a specific child necessitates an official investigation. A panel of experts can address privacy right concerns involved in preserving these reports. This panel would also address the technical ways to make an interstate system work efficiently. In many cases, the only way to know that there are prior reports on a child is to keep the screened out reports. With this knowledge, why aren't all reports kept, even if it means taking more time to create a system that actually works? If there are multiple calls on one family, there is a reason why, and it should be properly investigated and documented. I want to truly thank each and every one of you for being here today, and thank the staff and interns at CCAI who made this summer an incredible experience, and my advisor, Marie, who guided me through this entire process. Thank you to Senator Ron Johnson and his staff for a wonderful professional experience, and thank you to my husband, Jacob, and of course, my twin sister, Brooke, for being with me through this crazy life we have endured. Please remember that there are children across our country currently experiencing severe abuse and neglect, and some of them are struggling to survive day by day, and others are dying. Implementing uniform changes across states and keeping screened out reports could be a saving factor in many of their lives, as well as offer an escape from a situation that seems inescapable. Thank you.
Hello, my name is RODGERS, and I want to express gratitude to everyone that has made my internship successful. To the CCI staff, board members, advisory council members, and the Gerard family for their endless investment in my summer. My policy advisor, Patrick Houlihan, for his endless support. Senator Cassidy for hosting me in his office, and his staff, Brendan McAndrew and Pam Davidson, for investing in me during my time. To my foster mother for her endless support, God for the guidance in my life, and the Department of Child Family Services for encouraging my dream of making a difference for my home state. I'm from the great state of Louisiana, and I'm a rising senior at Northwestern State University. I enjoy attending my church and being a foster youth advocate. My advocacy began at 19 years old. A service provider who taught my mandated life skills classes offered me a peer support representative position at the city of my school. I gladly accepted, but was not aware of the different complications I would feel internally or face externally. Internally, I found I had a very fortunate experience in the child welfare system. Externally, I faced a need for an update to the system as a whole, though lack of funding. As society and each new round of classes came, our curriculum was not adequate enough for the aging out process. From the case management systems to several programs my state was losing, foster youth have lost their assistance from years ago. Becoming national advocate, I learned that other states were successful in various areas and brought those ideas back home for consideration. From this experience, I encourage Congress to create a data taxonomy. A taxonomy is a categorizing tool used by countries and businesses around the world. For example, a child moved from state A to state B. Say State A uses the term last name to classify the surname category, but State B classifies with family name. Without the taxonomy, transferring that data will result in an error and would need a manual input to show the child has a surname. It gives states the opportunity to transfer data easily so that State A would not have to recreate their files for State B. Foster youth and caretakers need access to information such as medication, education transcripts, and legal incarceration history. A taxonomy can easily transfer that. Transferring data opens the opportunities of sharing the ideas on what works in the system from state to state. Data can also be easily transferred from the state to the federal government, where it can be drawn from the source data of the taxonomy. Anonymized data can be provided for researchers and technology developers for the necessary information to create their various programs for foster youth. Data, to me, is important. Watching the youth's progression in life is vital. Whether there's a trend of youth taking certain medication, dropping out of school, and going to jail, we can see where things are going wrong and make the changes necessary before they can never be undone. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is JAMESHIA Shepherd. First, I would like to thank God and those who have played a role in providing me with this platform to present an issue that I'm greatly passionate about. As a society, we must intervene early to ensure youth who experience foster care have positive educational outcomes by providing access to educational resources. 84% of traditional college-age foster youth reported wanting to go to college. However, only 20% of those youth who actually graduated attended college. I would have been a part of that 84% of college students who have dreams and desires of attending college but never attended. After leaving my dream university due to the lack of financial support, I felt depressed and defeated. I returned home to pursue my education through community college, where I stumbled across a pamphlet that talked about foster care resources, talked about educational resources for foster youth. In that moment, I got lucky. But what are the chances that hundreds of thousands of foster youth who age out of the foster care system on the yearly basis will get lucky? There needs to be measures in place to ensure foster youth are informed and utilizing educational resources and opportunities. Because I was one of the lucky ones and stumbled across information, in May of 2017, I graduated with my master's in social work. Foster youth are directly involved in various systems, from courts to school counselors to therapists, yet there's still a lack of encouragement and communication for youth to seek higher education. Federal law requires the development of a written case plan for any child receiving foster care maintenance payments under Title IV-E. The case plan addresses the child's educational stability while in foster care. It does not address preparation for post-secondary education and opportunities. Currently, there is a requirement that all youth in care at age 16 or older develop a transition plan 90 days prior to exiting foster care. Case planning is at the center of all the previously mentioned systems that foster youth are involved in. Therefore, case planning must be the starting point to connect youth to educational opportunities, while holding the system accountable to ensure professionals are carrying out policy as intended. My recommendation for Congress is to ensure youth who are preparing to exit foster care are aware and utilizing the educational resources that are available. Congress should strengthen the time for planning and completing the transition plan by including an educational plan with an educational expert 365 days before the youth exit care. Since the federal government acts as this crucial role to parents to foster youth, we must address the lack of awareness of foster youth have about the educational resources that's available. Foster youth receiving knowledge and awareness of the available resources is critical to positive outcomes. You can read more about my policy report on page 34. Thank you.
It's okay, y'all know who I am. Good afternoon. First and foremost, all glory be to God and all compliments to my grandmother for raising me to be the woman that I am. I would like to take this opportunity to thank CCAI for accommodating us this summer and providing us with the opportunity to be before you all today. The amazing Congresswoman Bass and the National Foster Youth Institute for all of their love and support, and the phenomenal Senator Harris and her awesome staff for hosting me this summer. My name is Tiffany Boyd, and like I stated, I am here to transform the stakeholders who are affected by the decisions, regulations, and legislation into the stockholders who make those decisions that dictate their lives. As a child of a schizophrenic mother who grew up in the projects in Long Beach, California, I was taught the hard way that experience is often the best teacher. It is living those experiences that make you best equipped to make the decisions, to know right from wrong, and to understand how your decisions affect those around you. Of my mother's 7 children, I am considered to be the lucky one for having a loving grandmother provide for me, for going to college and possessing the ability to break the cycle of abuse that I was born into. Unfortunately, at this point in my life, I cannot agree. I do not believe that it is okay nor appropriate to be considered lucky or an exception for having someone who loved me. This should be the standard. I urge you all to read my policy report on page 38 in its entirety. In this report, I make some bold but very necessary suggestions that would make for great legislation and have the potential to change the system in the ways that the youth who are affected by it are deserving of. My recommendations are to, 1, direct the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to establish an expert panel that includes researchers, program directors, parents, youth, former foster youth, and other community partners to reassess the Child and Family Services, CFSR, measures as they pertain to the quality of care standards. 2, for Congress to examine the outcomes of state CFSRs and performance improvement plans to develop policies such as incentives to ensure that states do more to improve the quality of services for children in the system, similar to how the federal government has established quality of care standards for federally funded health services. And 3, to require each child welfare agency in every state to establish within their charter a commission with actual decision-making power, comprised of stakeholders including current and emancipated clients, legal guardians, custodial grandparents, and parents who lost and regained the custody of their children. These recommendations, or should I say potential legislations, would allow us to establish a mandate for quality of care for all youth and children in care, regardless to their geographic location, type of placement, and the level of support that they received while in the system. I thank you all for your time and consideration, and again, I urge you to read my policy report located on page 38 in its entirety to better understand the points that I have made before you today. Thank you.
Hello, and aloha, everyone. Again, my name is KEOLA. I'm a CCAI intern, and I'm happy to be here. I would like to give acknowledgments to the entire CCAI staff, Marcy Roth, Dile Ulima, and my foster dad, Edward Kukahiko Jr., watching me from up above. To further promote normalcy for youth experiencing a foster care system, United States policymakers have made great advances to ensure that youth have rights and that they are aware of them. For example, the Preventing Sex Trafficking and Strengthening Families Act of 2014 established the provisions for youth to participate in their case planning, or obtain important documents, and join extracurricular activities like football and hula. Unfortunately, even till this day, youth rights are violated, and many youth do not know how to advocate for themselves. Establishing a youth-friendly Children's Ombudsman Office in every state would increase accountability of child welfare services and strengthen opportunities for foster youth. During my time in foster care, I was blessed and fortunate to have many of my needs met by the agents in my life, such as my foster parent, social worker, and guardian ad litem. I served on a foster youth leadership board for 5 years, met a lot of youth, and not everyone has had my experience. Many stories were told, and I learned that some rights were violated. A colleague of mine once told her story. Her foster parent was not able to provide her with transportation to join a canoe paddling club. Additional efforts should have been made to accommodate her and let her attend this activity. As long as she can maintain her grades and follow the household rules, she should have been able to gain the many benefits of being on a sport team. Here are some barriers. Young people do not always have a trusting relationship with any of their agents. there are often barriers to reaching higher management, and the services that the current ombudsman across the nation provide children are not uniform. My 3 recommendations to Congress are: first, require that states establish a keyword youth-friendly children's ombudsman office. Second, ensure that these ombudsmen are established independently with specific oversight to child welfare services. And lastly, to ensure that these ombudsmen have online complaint filings that are youth-friendly. While being in DC this entire summer, I've concluded this: many foster youth do not know how to advocate for themselves, and having an ombudsman in their corner would be a powerful tool to help them to achieve success in life. Thank you for considering how we can improve the complaint process for young people.
Hello, my name is Michael Teresa MELLIFERA, and I am before you today to advocate for bipartisan, bicameral juvenile justice reform that is smart, not needlessly tough on delinquency. Currently, the juvenile justice system perpetuates a cycle of incarceration that is comprised of the following 5 critical events: maltreatment, delinquency, secure confinement, re-traumatization, and recidivism. The individuals who disproportionately fall prey to this cycle of incarceration are called crossover youth, a term which designates youth who have engaged in delinquent behavior and have also experienced maltreatment. Every year, upwards of 50,000 youth in the child welfare system make contact with the juvenile justice system. My older brother was one of them. My brother and I entered the foster care system due to the dangers we faced in our original home. Unfortunately, state intervention into our lives stripped us of many healthy adolescent opportunities, which only exacerbated my brother's trauma. While in foster care, my brother and I provided each other our only sense of safety, continuity, and emotional support. However, that did not treat my brother's trauma or the lasting effects on his behavior. My brother cared deeply and wanted to provide for me, but resorted to committing petty crimes to make up for what the state did not provide us. An immoral but all too common decision for maltreated youth. It is vital that the juvenile justice system not only take into account offense severity in sentencing procedures, but also maltreatment history and risk level. However, crossover youth are often treated as serious, violent, and chronic offenders and are placed in the most restrictive and traumatic sanction settings, such as secure confinement, despite the fact that their offenses are no more serious. After my brother was released from juvenile prison, he emancipated and became justice involved in only 1 year, an experience he shares with approximately 1 in 4 foster care alumni. I asked Congress to do 2 things. First, Congress, add another core compliance requirement to the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act, called disproportionate crossover youth contact. This compliance requirement will enhance state awareness of crossover youth who are disproportionately represented in the juvenile justice system. It will also hold states accountable for researching and reducing the disproportionality as a condition for receipt of the Title II Formula Grants Program. Second, Congress, require the Department of Justice and the Department of Health and Human Services to create a joint commission tasked with developing federal standards for graduated sanction systems, as well as for diversion program eligibility. The commission's recommendations will ensure that crossover youth have equity of access to diversion programs. To conclude, even to this day, at this very moment, I have a hard time reconciling my memories of my brother the boy with the knowledge I have about my brother as a man. Please write down any questions you have about my research findings, policy recommendations, or even personal investment in crossover youth issues, and be sure to ask them at the end of the panel. Thank you. God bless.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today. My name is JAMEELAH Love, and I want to take the time to thank my mother in heaven and my siblings, not only for being my family, but for also making the effort to rebuild our relationship that was severed while in out-of-home care. I would also like to thank the Ways and Means Committee Minority and Congressman Richard Neal for hosting me this summer, and my support system throughout the years, such as Lat Lake, St. A, and Kids Matter. And last but not least, I want to thank my advisor, Laura Wojcik, for helping me find my voice and confidence and allowing me to bloom into the beautiful butterfly you all see today. When I entered foster care at the age of 14, I did not have the voice and ability to advocate for myself like I do now, because I didn't know how or what I can advocate for. I was never told of my rights as a foster youth. There was no information given to me about my right to have my personal documents, attend court hearings, receive an allowance, or to visit my siblings. Without knowing my rights, I wasn't empowered to advocate for myself the way I could have if I had known them. When I look back at my time in care, I know that having and knowing my rights would have better prepared me for post-secondary education and increased my access to independent living skills, adequate housing, and other resources. This is why I am proposing that Congress develop a federal foster care bill of rights, and to ensure youth receive these rights at the age of 12 and enforce the provisions of the Preventing Sex Trafficking and Strengthening Families Act to ensure states are complying with its requirements. The fight for a federal foster care bill of rights is not new. In fact, the first foster care bill of rights was ratified in Philadelphia in 1973. Even with the movement building momentum for over 40 years, there currently is still not a federal foster care bill of rights. However, with the Preventing Sex Trafficking and Strengthening Families Act of 2014, Congress took an extraordinary step in protecting foster youth by legislating that all foster youth are entitled to a document with their rights. Congress can build on this progress by ensuring that all foster youth have a universal standard of rights. With this in mind, Congress should direct the Department of Health and Human Services to develop the Foster Care Bill of Rights by convening a work group comprised of former and current foster youth, foster and birth parents, caseworkers, judicial officials, children's advocates, and others as approved. The Preventing Sex Trafficking and Strengthening Families Act should be amended so that youth receive a new federal foster care bill of rights starting at the age of 12 and to receive an annual updated copy that shall be signed by the youth. Finally, Congress should ensure that states are complying with the provisions of the Preventing Sex Trafficking and Strengthening Families Act so that every foster youth is given a list of these federal rights and that stakeholders are given training on what rights are afforded to foster youth. Typically, foster youth outcomes are well below the national averages. Studies by leading research organizations highlight the high risk of incarceration, school dropout rate, and the increasing rate of homelessness for youth who age out of foster care. There are staggering statistics surrounding foster care, such as 15% of foster youth pursue post-secondary education and only 3% obtain a college degree. It is my hope that by empowering youth with the tools to advocate for themselves, we can create better outcomes for my foster brothers and sisters. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Alexandria WARE, and I'm from Wichita, Kansas. I am currently a grad student at Oklahoma State University, majoring in Development and Family Science. I would like to thank you all today for coming to hear my policy report, and I'd like to thank my host office for this amazing opportunity to learn about the legislation process. I'm here today to discuss social-emotional support and mentors for foster alumni on college campuses, as this topic is near and dear to my heart. Only 3% of foster youth will earn a degree during their lifetime, and one strategy to increase the college retention and graduation rates among foster alumni is to connect them with mentors during their college careers to help compensate for the lack of social-emotional support. During my sophomore year of college, I lost 3 biological relatives. I did not know who to turn to, nor where to go, and the trauma worsened my depression. Balancing my biological and adopted family life and the trauma and the pressures of college, it was difficult. I resorted to unhealthy coping mechanisms to numb my pain. My mentor supported and taught me a healthy way to deal with trauma and grief. She made such a difference in my educational experience. I believe all foster youth need a mentor in higher education to support social and emotional development. The problem is that the transition from foster care to real life, including higher education, is a difficult adjustment for most foster youth. And research shows that lacking healthy social emotional support systems strongly correlates to dropping out of college. Currently, federal law does not exist. In 2015, Senator Patty Murray introduced the Higher Education and Access for Success in Homeless and Foster Care Act of 2015. This bill, if enacted, will require higher education institutes to supply a designated single point of contact model on college campuses as a resource for homeless and foster youth. I am hopeful this bill will be introduced in the 115th Congress. My recommendations for Congress are: colleges should offer mentoring programs to ensure foster youth have reliable, supportive, and as well as financial and academic and housing resources to stay in school, but the necessary psychological services that may be needed to assist their traumatic histories. Congress should require every higher education institute that receives federal financial aid funding to establish a single point of contact model for students who were previously in foster care. In closing, I'd like to urge Congress to make specific changes around social-emotional support for foster alumni on college campuses. These changes would affect and matter to youth in care and aging out of care because they will be able to complete their goal of obtaining a higher education degree. Thank you for your time to come hear about my experiences and my policy report. Have a great day.
There we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Drady, and I had the amazing honor and privilege to manage our 12 foster youth interns this summer, and I'm so glad that you all are here today to hear their policy recommendations. I would like to introduce Chairman Brady. The chairman hosted Alex in his office this year, and we really want to thank you for giving us this beautiful room. It's really great. So, Chairman Brady, please.
Well, welcome to the House Ways and Means hearing room, and congratulations to each of you on your internship. As an adoptive parent myself of 2 boys, I know how important this issue is in real life, and I think that the best policy, the best solutions is made by those with real-world experience, like all of you, who understand the problem we're trying to solve as a country. We're so grateful for your hard work on these detailed policy recommendations. Join me in thanking them for the great solutions on this. So I want to make a special shout out to Alexandria WARE. Alex, a valuable addition to the Ways and Means Committee during, as you've noticed, a very busy time. And I'm grateful for your work on ways to help more foster youth graduate with a college degree. You heard her talk about the challenges that occurs that many of us, frankly, have never been faced with. And she has such a strong interest based on her own experience in connecting foster youth to the resources they need to be successful in college, including mentors, which I think is a terrific idea, because we know college is about more than just what goes on in the classroom. So, to each of the interns, thank you so much. Just remember, because of your experience and your willingness to just dive in, you're having a real impact. I mean, a real impact on those who experience foster care. And you are influencing policy at the local, state, and national levels. Look, we all came here in life to make a difference, to be productive, to have mattered that we lived at all. And you are, through your experiencing, doing all of that, making a tremendous difference and mattering in all ways. So I want to wish you the best. I want to thank you for doing a great job. And we're going to take your solutions to heart. Let's see if we can't move this forward in legislation. Thank you all.
Hello, everyone. My name is DeMonteA Thompson. I'm an intern in the office of Senator Tim Scott, and I'd like to thank the senator, his staff that's standing in the back, woo-woo, CCAI staff and volunteers. I was born and raised in Compton, California, by my great aunt and my great uncle. And when I was very young, my great aunt passed away. She had a dying dream that my twin brother and I graduated from college. My great uncle became our only supporter. I kept that dream alive and I made it to college, and I had to work multiple jobs, 40 hours a week, to keep up with the tuition hikes, books, and other supplies. My brother and I later had to move off campus to save money, which sadly had an adverse effect on our financial aid package. So with minimal financial support, my health and schoolwork began to suffer. I had to choose between the two. My financial challenges then continued when I went to USC for graduate school. But like myself, many foster youth rely on support systems like the government and their resilience to attend and complete college, to beat the odds. But it's hard to fight the good fight when your basic needs aren't met. Foster youth want to go to college. But studies show, as you've heard before, only 3% will obtain a bachelor's degree. The lack of representation of foster youth in college is largely due to the significant financial cost of college, which just keeps rising. In fact, at a public four-year institution, the tuition increased from $9,000 in 2002 to $19,000 in 2015. Congress has taken action to alleviate some of the financial burden of foster youth who attend college, such as their recently passed bill, H.R. 2847. This expands the age eligibility under the Educational Training Vouchers, ETV. ETV was signed into law in 2002, and it provides states to administer up to $5,000 per year to eligible foster youth in college or accredited vocational programs. It's been 15 years since that threshold has been set. More is needed to be done for the 16,000 foster youth who are taking advantage of this fund. What can we do to ensure their success? Congress, increase the ETV amount from $5,000 to $10,000 to account for the rise in tuition, living expenses, and other costs. Congress, my second and last recommendation, amend the ETV to include the provision to allow foster youth to pay for pre-college expenses. You see, while I was in college, I had the opportunity to present a TED Talk, to write a book, and to conduct research around the world. My twin brother managed a multi-million-dollar financial portfolio and is currently employed at a Fortune 500 company. And there are definitely more foster youth who will make such accomplishments and beyond. My twin brother and I are not anomalies. Let's make change. Let's make change for a more attainable college degree for foster youth. Thank you.
On behalf of the 2017 Foster Youth Interns, I want to thank you for taking your time to hear our recommendations for child welfare reform. It is our hope that you take these keys with you and utilize them as a beacon of inspiration when carrying out the tough duties your positions require you to do. You've heard from 12 different individuals with very different backgrounds who all are working towards achieving the same goal of making your jobs easier and creating better outcomes for foster youth. Today, we utilize the story of me to better the stories of us and paint a beautiful picture of we. Please remember, if we are the keys to unlocking potential in child welfare reform, then you are the hand that turns the lock. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming out. We want to now open the floor for any questions, so feel free to ask as many questions as possible. Yes. Microphone. It's okay.
Thank you. So I'm here with CASA of DC, Court-Appointed Special Advocates.
Nice.
So I wanted to find out who among you had a CASA or mentor or an advocate or an additional support in your life that really benefited you and how, but also how they could have better supported you. We really want to know how we can best direct our volunteers to support the youth that they work with, and getting to hear from you about the supports you received and the supports you wish you had received would be really beneficial.
Tiffany?
I just so happen to have a mentor who's an executive director of CASA LA. And she is an amazing woman and has provided me with a tremendous amount of support since originally coming into contact her when I was 15 years old. At 29, she is still a huge part of my life. The only thing that I would change about our relationship, or another relationship that I would have added to my life as another mentor, would have been someone who represented either my background, my struggle, or my personal passions. While Wendy is an amazing woman, her ability to connect with me came out of her passion and going out of her way. It came out of her leveraging her privilege in order to allow me into her circle and show me a different part of life. While that was amazing and necessary, I was not able to relate to her in the ways that I desired. She could not understand my pain. She could not understand my willingness to hold on to my family and to hold on to my struggle in an effort to never forget where I came from. So if I can change anything about that or add another mentor into my life, because I wouldn't want to change Wendy, she's awesome, I would have had someone who either represented my background or my struggle or my passions.
Thank you. Does anyone want to answer that question? JAMEELAH?
So, I'm on the other side of the spectrum. I've never had a mentor or a CASA worker or anything like that. Unfortunately, those services were not presented to me until I was too old to even access them. I would say that there are certain people who have come into my life and helped me. One thing that I think people who do that they can do better is don't come in only after someone has fallen. The goal should be to help them walk steady.
Thank you. Are there any more questions in the audience? Yes, the young lady right there with the glasses. 1 second, they're going to hand you a microphone. Yeah, go.
Hi, my name is Tyler, and I work in the office with JAMESHIA. And I was just wondering if any of you guys had the opportunity to see any of your policy recommendations actually implemented into any piece of legislation or anything that your office is interested in doing.
I had the pleasure of interning in Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence's office this summer, and they have been really great in involving me in the legislation process, and really taking my ideas and including me in some bills that they are looking to present. So I have had the opportunity to really inform some of the work of the legislative aides. So, yeah.
Great. Any more questions? Yes, gentleman right here.
Thank you guys so much for talking with us today. I've learned a ton just being in the audience here. I'm a friend of Justin's, so he kind of dragged me in here. Can y'all hear me? No? Not at all? Closer to the mic, can y'all hear me now? Okay. Basically what I just said is thank you. I have a couple questions for you. The first pertains to barriers to education. You guys talked a lot about the financial element of the foster care experience and how that prevents people from accessing education. You also talked about how difficult it is for foster care students or students who have passed through the foster care system to finance their education once they arrive at college. What are some non-financial barriers to education and some things that universities can do to better support students who have passed through foster care that don't pertain to finances? And my second question is, what can members of Congress do outside of the legislative process to better support and engage with foster communities in their home districts?
Alex?
Well, my policy report I don't remember the exact page, but we can figure that out, deals with social emotional development, so the social emotional support that is needed for kids on college campuses. So a lot of times it's easier for the schools to figure out financial and housing and stuff by extending deadlines or, having people help donate money or helping them find scholarships, but the social emotional part is not there. And so there, in my policy report, I touch on 2 great programs. So TIP at Wayne State University and their model of the single point of contact, and I touch on Washington State's statewide initiative to help with the social emotional support. And then things that people can do outside of Congress and in Congress is just be involved and be aware and just know, just take the initiative to learn, come to things like this, get involved with CCAI, know about the issues going on in your state and the outcomes of youth who are transitioning out of care.
That's it. To answer your second question, more things that they can do outside of the legislative process can be supporting more of the shadow day process. A lot of us here are actually participants of the shadow day in the past few years, and that has been a rewarding experience for us, but also for members that I've talked to. We get to go and shadow members and tell them about our personal stories, and it enriches them because they realize that we're not really a statistic anymore. We're an actual person with an actual life and a story. So going to that, or going to their town halls, or going into different areas of their communities that they know may have a high rate of foster youth or low communities, and see what's going on with them and hear a story, because you won't know what's going on until you hear the experience.
Thank you. Alexis and Justin.
So one other thing I would say that's non-financial is when you're applying for an apartment or something, a lack of a cosigner because you don't have a parent is a big issue. That I'm sure many of us have had. I've had personally a problem with that. So that's something that could be worked on, as well as the transition from high school to college or adult life. A lot of times we don't have the knowledge of how to pay bills, how to apply for scholarships, how to just do normal adult things that people with parents actually have, and their parents tell them that kind of stuff. So
First, thank you, JT, for coming. He is a good friend of mine. I really appreciate you being here and your questions. To answer the first, I echo all of my colleagues' points. Going off of what Alex said regarding social and emotional support, one of the least utilized resources of that, I believe, on college campuses is not only between adults and college students, but between college students as well, specifically between other students who have experience with the foster care system. It's underutilized, like I mentioned. There are some pilot programs, specifically in California, that have done that quite well. I'm personally trying to start that at our university, and we'll see how that shapes up.
Thank you. You have a question? We're going to come back to you guys. We want to move the Q&A along. You?
Yeah. So as far as resource, I guess supports on campus, I guess speaking specifically for my campus and University of Wisconsin Stout in Menominee, we have the Fostering Success Program, which is in place in different colleges across the United States, but not at many. I believe it's gotten slightly begun to be implemented in Milwaukee, but that program is a huge part of why I'm here. That program, just having those 2 individuals, because it's so small, just having them be there to help to know, the next step to take for different things, being resources for, different kids on campus in foster care if they need a place to go for breaks or things like that. So this is a program that's already out there. It's just not widespread, and it's definitely a really good program that should become more widespread across the United States.
Yes, Tiffany?
Thank you. So there's this concept that people call imposter syndrome, which I more so label as the undiagnosed double consciousness of the foster youth. Within our population, sometimes we can soar through some of the most amazing heights, but we don't always believe that we belong in the sky or understand that our wings will work just fine. So I think one of the least expensive things that you can do is provide support, love, and encouragement. You see a foster youth doing amazing things, just tell them that they can do it, that they do belong there, and that they should keep going. Because oftentimes the most difficult battle is within ourselves. That's the one that keeps us from showing up and doing our best and achieving some of the most amazing accomplishments that some of us have taken part in. So to speak to the double consciousness and to reassure us that that voice in our heads is nothing more than just a voice in our heads, and that we can do anything that we put our minds to, I think is a huge assistance to helping us, not just in education, but in any situation that we find ourselves in.
Thank you, Tiffany. Yes.
Hello. First of all, congratulations to all of you. All should be very proud of your accomplishment. I have the pleasure to meet a few of you before. I apologize we were late, but we did get to read a couple of the briefs ahead of time. So I did have a specific question. My name is Darrell, and we're with the nonprofit called Think of Us, centered around tech for foster youth to navigate. So my specific question for you is, when you have your virtual success coaches, how do you envision actually obtaining those coaches? And then more importantly, how do you use technology to make sure that those aren't just coaches, but actually successful coaches, so that they will actually be able to help the youth and not just be someone that's there but not actually assisting them?
Yes, that's a really good question. Thank you for that. So we want to make sure that people at least have a bachelor's degree, have experience with trauma, or have worked with persons in the foster care system. And how do you ensure that people are actually like coaching? I actually want to give you more details after this Q&A, but just having someone who's passionate and, as I stated before, who has experience, because there are many people who want to get involved just for the name, but they aren't there for the child. But just like having them go through a thorough process and just making sure their heart is in the right place. That's how you start, just making sure they have that passion and they want to be there. So thank you for your question, and we'll talk more after the Q&A. Any more questions? Yes, the lady over there.
Hi, thanks everyone. My name is Kelly Miller, CCAI. Thank you for having us. I work for USCIS. And thank you all for sharing your experiences and your policy recommendations. And my question, please forgive me if I miss this pronunciation, JAMEELAH? Yes, my question is for you, and I'm very curious to hear about why you picked the age of 12 and whether or not you considered perhaps younger, or maybe introducing just the basic concept at a younger age. So curious to hear about that.
I picked the age of 12, so I'm not sure how it works in other states, but I know in Wisconsin, at the age of 12 is when they start to have the youth provide more input into their court cases, the process of the court cases. And I just feel like at the age of 12, they are mature enough to have, to understand the rights, as long as it's given to them in a comprehensible, format. I am perfectly fine with going younger than the age of 12. I just know for a fact we need to go younger than the age of 14, which is what is currently stated in the Preventing Sex Trafficking and Strengthening Families Act.
Thank you for that, JAMEELAH. Any more questions?
Hi, my name is Angelique, and I'm from Senator Brown's office. I have a question specifically for the folks who wrote on education. I was curious to know what was your experience via your foster care agency and your pursuit in higher education, and what role did your foster care agency play in promoting higher education to you, and anything you might want to add.
Yes, so the role that my foster care agency played, it was very silent and invisible. I was very clear that I wanted to attend a higher education, but I don't think they took me serious to really implement and put in place some resources to help guide me there. But once I got there and I showed them that I wanted to be there and I made my own efforts, that's when they kind of stepped in. And to answer the second part, the higher institution, I came across information highlighting the resources that was at the school. So that's why I think that there needs to be a shift. Maybe that the school can reach out to foster youth. I know there's HIPAA laws and things that kind of, get in the way of that. But something around reaching out to foster youth, just letting them know that these resources these resources are here and available, and it's up to you if you want to use them or not.
And did you have a designated person at your foster care agency solely focused on your education?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Did you have someone at your foster care agency who was specifically tailored to education and focusing on your education as a foster youth?
No, there was not one specific person that helped me pursue higher education within the system, yes.
DeMonte?
I think where you're, based on that last question, I think what you're implying is that there should be someone there, right, who focused solely on education. But for me, myself, I didn't have anyone in the system who guided me towards college. Upon my graduation in 12th grade, my high school teacher made it mandatory for all the students to apply for a college, regardless of what college it is, community college, wherever. And coming from Compton, my family, we weren't really, we were placed in low kind of like standards. So just graduating high school in my family was like, oh, you made it, bruh, you made it. But I wanted more. So after applying for college in that classroom, I got in, and once they knew, once the services knew, they were like, okay, we're gonna help you out. But the help wasn't there. I reached out to them several times regarding my circumstances, and the lack of communication just really turned me off. It's like asking your parents, can we go eat? And your parents saying, we'll eat later, or not even acknowledging your question. And so I felt that way, so I kind of felt this tense, relationship grew, and I just was persistent. I kept emailing them, and they finally reached out to me, and they were like, oh, okay, we'll help you out. So they did eventually help me, and I think for most of us, sometimes it takes that persistence, like, hey, we're here, we need your help, get annoying to the system, and then they'll know that the squeaky wheel, we need to give it some oil.
Thank you.
I just want to make one statement for you, just to be very specific. That is one of my recommendations and highlighted in my policy report, that there is an educational expert contacting each foster youth to let them know that those resources are available, and that starts on page 34. Thanks.
Alex?
Well, my experience is very different than both of yours. So I had the same social worker from the time I entered care until the time I exited care. And so she was my advocate about me going to school and making sure everything that needed to be done was done. So when I applied, I went to the same high school for a few years. And so my counselor knew, like, I wanted to go to school. My social worker knew I wanted to go to school. So they made sure that I got into school, and they made sure that everything that I needed to get there was done. But when I got to campus, that's where the lack of the schooling and the help was at the institution. So helping me get there was great, but not every child who grows up in foster care will have the same social worker like I did. So my experience with that was very different. So my worker made sure I went to school.
I'm actually going to answer that question. When I got accepted into Berkeley, my agency was actually flabbergasted that I got accepted in such a college of that high caliber. And I actually had to pay for my plane ticket. And when I got there, I had to pay for my meals. So already, like, being in that state of destitute, it kind of impacted my whole just emotion of being there. But there was little to no support, and it made the process harder. So, yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you all so much for your recommendations, your hard work, and congratulations for everything you've accomplished so far. My name is Sandra Gasca-Gonzalez, and I work with the Jim Casey Youth Opportunities Initiative at the Annie E. Casey Foundation. And I actually have a question for KEOLA about normalcy and your particular perspective coming from the islands and all of the normalcy work that you have been doing on the islands. What can we on the mainland learn from you specifically? Specific things that you have seen be effective that can really bring some normalcy to the youth on the mainland?
Thank you for the question. Thank you for the question, Sandra. I guess I'll begin with sharing about so our state passed the normalcy bill in 2015, and it sort of complies with the Preventing Sex Trafficking and Strengthening Families Act in 2014. So basically, I think a lot of states are, trying to figure out how to incorporate more normalcy and that affects youth. So basically, with the bill that passed, foster parents have qualified immunity. So basically, we want foster parents to exercise, prudent parenting, good parenting, so we can let our youth have healthy risk-taking opportunities. We want them to join chess club, basketball teams, and just get them involved with the community. And there's myths. There's foster youth myths that your son can't sleep over your friend's house, and they can. But so it's kind of like debunking these myths, but allowing youth to just feel more normal, because it makes a big difference as they get older. That's just one thing, but implementation it's a huge thing that I'm learning. When you implement a bill, without strong campaigning, preferably by a youth board, that would be very effective. But so just to kind of add to that topic, when I was serving on the youth leadership board, I would go to different islands and we would do trainings with a key speaker, and we would just talk about normalcy and how does that look like. And so it's been really fun. Yeah.
Yes, this gentleman right here in the front. Last one.
Hi, Sixto Cancer from Think of Us. With the interesting political climate, what do you think it's going to take to keep these recommendations, when cuts are trending, less regulations are being implemented, to make sure that these recommendations are at the forefront? And then how are we as alumni of CARE empowered to play a role beyond today and beyond the briefing?
JAMEELAH?
So, on the topic of foster care and child welfare reform, I think we're pretty lucky on this topic because it's usually a nonpartisan topic with legislators. So I think the main thing to do to keep it as a priority is to continuous education. We got to continuously educate the people on the Hill. We got to let them know that these are problems and we need to see some changes in them. As far as budget cuts and all of that, I think that's a little too unpredictable at this point to even think about speaking on. But what we can do, our part, is just to educate you all so that you can take it to your congressmen and women who you work for.
Justin?
Mr. Cancel, thank you for your question. I agree with JAMEELAH in that there are some pros with working in child welfare reform because it's largely a bipartisan issue. At the same time, one of the biggest cons about working in child welfare is that the people who it affects the most are often silenced. And so we're in a unique position as alumni of CARE to really try to create a coalition of awareness and advocacy. That's truly what we're going to need in order to keep these policy recommendations at the forefront of the administration, regardless of whether they're implemented within the next 3 years or thereafter. Thank you.
Alex?
So like Justin said, child welfare is normally a bipartisan issue, and you heard from Chairman Brady about how he's an adoptive parent. And I just know, being in the Ways and Means Committee majority, that child welfare is something that they're truly passionate about. It's not just something they're like, oh, okay, we need to do this. It's something that most of the members on the committee are involved in some certain way, whether it's through the subcommittees or whatever. So I've had a great experience, and it's just continuing to educate people and making sure that we're brought to the table. And so a lot of us, like Tiffany has said in her statement, it's changing us to the stockholders, because we need to be at the table and we need to make sure that our voices are heard, because we're the ones that legislations affect.
Everything that my colleagues have said, I definitely agree with. One thing I wanted to add is that We must change the master narrative. The master narrative, we always talk, every time I tell someone I'm blunt, I'm like, yeah, I was raised by my great grandparents and so on and so forth. I'm a former foster youth. There's a sense of like sadness that overcomes someone, and they're like, oh my gosh, baby, I'm so sorry. Like, no, don't feel sorry for me. I made it, and many other foster youth are making it. We're making it out here. And what I want other foster youth to know is that we are here because we want them to be here. And there are foster youth who are in circumstances that are no chance of their own, but for us to perpetuate the idea that they should be sad or they're trauma-induced or all of these stereotypes, we have to change the way we think about them and to provide them with the same resources we provide anyone else, our non-foster youth peers, with the same internships. I was speaking to interns in my office, and they were talking about how, most of the interns on the Hill are unpaid. And I'm thinking to myself, like, if I wasn't a part of this opportunity, next year, if I wanted to do an internship on the Hill, who can pay me to come on the Hill? Most foster youth wouldn't have that opportunity. So how do we change the laws, the policies, the small things, the support, in making sure that we open the door for those who are less fortunate, for those who don't have guidance, for those who are low income?
Tonisha?
Yeah, so I think somebody else mentioned that it's definitely good that it's more of a bipartisan issue. But I think as far as, like you mentioned, like budget cuts, money being taken away, stuff like that, like obviously we don't know what's going to happen with things. But I think that one good thing to remember, to remind people, to bring up is that by investing upfront or investing in these things now, it's long-term saving money. Like in my own report, I give an actual statistic of the money it's saving for every child that dies, or even the children that are in foster care, or the kids that aren't going to college that are getting involved in the juvenile justice system, or not getting degrees and therefore, on the streets. Like all of these things are costing us money, and I think people, think oh, well, we can't deal with that because it's too much money, but in reality, it's saving you money. So I think just making sure that you repeat that over and over, yeah.
You all are amazing. So I just wanted to take a few moments to recognize a few more people because this program, it's a rather rigorous summer experience. I think the interns would concur. And the team at CCAI could not pull off even an event like this without amazing volunteers, let alone 9 weeks of having these young leaders here on the Hill and taking DC by storm. So I want to acknowledge a few people, many of whom are in the room and some of whom are not. Barb Walzer is one of CCAI's founding board members. Today is her birthday. Happy birthday, Barb. And she hosts the Foster Youth Interns for a welcome retreat in Danville, Pennsylvania every year, and we're grateful. Debbie Riley with the Center for Adoption Support and Education. Debbie's not here, but we're grateful for their partnership. The child welfare team at the Congressional Research Service, Emily and Adrian. I think you ladies are in the room. If you are a foster youth intern alumni, will you just wave your hand? I know there's a few of you in the room here. Awesome, great. The CCAI interns, we have Rebecca, Kristen, Gates, Karis, and Tiffany. I think most of them are in the room, and we could not pull off the work of the organization without them here with us this summer. Some of these ladies are here. And Val, I didn't say Val's name as well. Hope Cooper and Marcy Roth are not here with us, I don't believe, but they are with True North Group, and they took the interns through the entire report writing process this summer, and they were extraordinary. And then there are some very special people. Some of them were named by the interns, but each intern is matched with a report advisor who works alongside them every week, multiple times a week throughout the summer, and they invest so much of their personal time and energy in the summer to our foster youth interns, so I would like to name them. Tiffany Behrens, if you're here, would you stand up? Marie Bloom-Capizzi, Rebecca Deutscher, Taylor Drady, Lindsay Harrington, Patrick Houlihan, Ashley Lance, Zachary Laris, Rika Mather, Jill Reyes, and Jennifer Van E. We are so grateful. A few more people. Bear with me. I'm very grateful. Eugenia, Samantha, and Taylor at the Arnold and Porter team. Are they in the room? Yes, there they are back there. We love you guys. They are arranging the first ever Foster Youth Intern Hill Day next week, where the interns are going to go and brief members of Congress and staff as well. So we're really excited about that. I saw Senator Mary Landrieu in the room. Thank you for coming, Senator. We appreciate your leadership. The senator serves on our board and continues to advise us. And I saw another of our advisory council members slip in, McLean Layton as well, so thank you. And then I just want to say a special thank you to the Ways and Means Committee staff, because as most of you know, we had a different room planned over in the Senate, and every single hearing room ended up being needed today, both in the morning and afternoon. They're very busy over there, which is why we didn't have any of our senators join us today. But really grateful for Ann and Ryan, and especially Chris. I don't know if she's in here right now, but they just really bent over backwards to help us, and we're grateful. And this is a beautiful room, so thank you to the Ways and Means Committee staff. Okay, and last but certainly not least, there are some women who have made this summer what it has been for the Foster Youth Interns, and that has been an extraordinary experience. And so the CCI staff spend a lot of time working around the clock during the summertime to support this internship program. We do a lot of weekend and evening events, right guys? And so that means that the staff are really working so hard. And so I wanted to acknowledge our Director of Development, Martina Arnold. She might be right outside. And then Taylor Drady, our Policy and Program Associate and fearless leader of the FYI program this summer. And then Lindsay Harrington is our FYI alum who came back to be our resident assistant and program associate, and she's there in the back and deserves a lot of credit too. So, really grateful for the staff that we get to work with. So, with that, there's one more group that we need to thank that makes this internship possible. And so I would like to introduce one more of CCAI's board members, Russ Sullivan. Russ used to work on the Senate Finance Committee and was committed to hosting one of the interns every summer, and we're grateful that the committee continues to do so because of what he did back when he was on the Hill. And he's now with McGuire Woods and spends a lot of time personally, just like Jack does, investing in the Foster Youth Interns when they're here with us. So we wanted to give him the floor to close it out.
Students, some of you talked today about mentoring, and mentoring generally can be a very encouraging thing, and I heard a lot of you about that. But mentoring sometimes can be a little tougher too. So I want to tell you my story, which deals with that woman in the blue down at the end. It was 2001. It was 2001 when we were about to pass a tax bill, and Senator Landrieu, who didn't serve on the Finance Committee, but ended up writing a good part of the bill anyway, increasing the size of the adoption credit, making it permanent, indexing for inflation, all the things that have helped out in that respect. And so I got to know her very well through that process. And then after the bill was over, she kind of got to know me a little bit. One day she caught me actually just in the hallway of the Hart Building, and she said, "I want to talk to you, Russ." She said, I know you work at the Finance Committee, but what are you doing in your personal life to help someone else? Do you have kids? I said, "No, I'm single, Senator. I don't have any children." She goes, "That doesn't matter. There's a kid out there who needs you." And it was the pressure from her mentoring me that led me to get involved in becoming legal guardian. So be careful what you ask for on that mentoring. It may really send you somewhere you had not anticipated going. So we want to introduce anyone who's here from some of the offices that hired these students today. So what I want to do is I'm going to name the office. If you are here, if you're a staff of that office, here to support these or work in that office, We'd like you to please stand when I call their name, if you would stand so people can kind of make the correlation. Let's start with the Ways and Means Committee and the Republican staff under Kevin Brady. All right. If y'all would remain standing, please. Remain standing. And for the Democratic staff and Richie Neal. On the other side of the Capitol, the Finance Committee, Republican staff and Orrin Hatch. And the Democratic staff, Ron Wyden. Remain standing. We have several other senators from the Finance Committee. Senator Richard Burr. We have Senator Bill Cassidy from Louisiana. And Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina also hired a student. 3 other senators, Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, Senator Kamala Harris of California, and Senator Mazie Hirono of Hawaii. We also have the senior Democrat on the Help Committee, Patty Murray of Washington, and Representative Brenda Lawrence of Michigan. Let's thank all of these staff who are here today supporting these students for their efforts and all they've learned. You may be seated. Now, for the rest of you who are here that are not from their offices, you have an opportunity, okay? What these students presented today is free intellectual property. They are not charging you for it, and you have the rights to grab it and use it and run with it for your boss to make a recommendation for him or her. I'm going to tell you should move quickly because I don't think it's going to be long before we see one of these people as a staffer in the House or the Senate, or maybe even sitting up there here on the dais. So. We appreciate all of your investment and efforts, and we're going to allow time for you to meet some of these students individually and talk to them about their efforts and their proposals. We have some refreshments here on the side. You're welcome to hang around for a few minutes. We appreciate it, and thank you very much for your attendance.